Hey everyone, it's Raphael from XX Productions, and I am back with a movie comparison video today. So, Spider-Man No Way Home was undoubtedly Marvel's biggest movie in 2021, released back in December. So, today it is now April 10th, so I probably don't have to add a spoiler warning, but just in case you haven't yet seen the movie, I will take the time to say that there will definitely be spoilers past this point, so I'm just putting that out there before we continue, alright? So, now that the dust has somewhat settled and the hype has died down a little bit, I've taken the opportunity to make this comparison video to Avengers Endgame, released all the way back in April 2019. So, both movies have undoubtedly drew massive amounts of cheers and applause, Endgame being a culmination of 11 years worth of Marvel movies, dating back from 2008 to 2019, whereas No Way Home focused on satisfying not only the newer generation of Marvel fans, but also fans of the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield versions of Spider-Man, all culminating in a huge multiversal adventure while bringing back classic villains that we're all familiar with, like Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Electro, Spider-Man, the Lizard, etc, etc. So, Venom was not really in this movie because they only really used him in the post-credits scene of the movie, but so like I'm just gonna put it out there. If you guys have seen the Venom Let There Be Carnage movie and you saw the post-credit scene of that, well, don't get too excited because he does go back to his own universe right afterwards anyway, but they did leave the symbiote behind, so I guess we will get Venom in the MCU anyway, so that's pretty cool, I guess. So No Way Home was pretty much built up from 2002, since technically if we are gonna add like the Tobey Maguire movies into account, this is from 2002 to 2021, so it's actually a lot longer than what Endgame was. Well, I'm sorry, it's a lot longer than what was building up to Endgame. So, basically what happens here, let's talk about the ending of both movies. Endgame has a somewhat happier ending in which Captain America gets to experience the life he missed out on. You know, he goes back in time and then ends up with Peggy, and then he lives out his life from there, like until he gives the shield to the new Captain America, Falcon. And then No Way Home was a more somber ending in which Peter Parker pretty much has to start from scratch again, so he loses everything to save the multiverse. So depending on which Spider-Man fan you talk to, some people feel that this is actually a good thing for the MCU Spider-Man, which I will go into right now. So it finally shows him being a lot more independent and, I guess you could say, responsible, similarly to the previous iterations of Spider-Man in the older movies, instead of Tom Holland constantly relying on Stark technology. So, regarding this criticism of Spider-Man, I actually do somewhat agree with that, but I mean, like, I never hated the character. Like, I know some people hate this version of Spider-Man a lot because of how it doesn't feel like Spider-Man, basically. It's not like the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man that we are used to, but anyway, I was glad though that since they've rebooted Spider-Man a lot of times, I'm glad that we got somewhat of a new take on the character, while also having the character development to eventually make him more similar to the Spider-Man that we all know. So yeah, so with that in mind, I never really hated the Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man like many other like critics, but this movie, however, this No Way Home movie, it really showed more of his potential as an actor and as a character compared to Far From Home or even Homecoming, which I did actually appreciate. So yeah, like I'm saying before though, like I wasn't really too sold in Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man, but this movie definitely stepped it up for him, okay? So good on Tom Holland for this. This movie was definitely an improvement compared to the other two. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the plot of both movies. So when it comes to the plot, okay, so hear me out on this. So I'm not going to, you know, be too brutal to either movie. I'm not going to diss on any of them, but let's just say that when it comes to the plot, both movies did not really have a strong plot, so that goes for both No Way Home and Avengers Endgame. So before we talk about No Way Home though, let's go ahead and talk about Avengers Endgame first, because I kind of spent a lot of time talking about No Way Home just a few minutes ago. So let's go ahead and talk about Avengers Endgame first. So some things come to mind, like some things off the top of my head I can think of. The Pym particles, which I recall it was Ant-Man who said that they have limited Pym particles, and as a result, no one, like in the Avengers, should screw up their time travel missions, or else there will be no second chances. Like, as in, like, if they use up the pim particles and they could get stuck in the past and, I guess, you know, live out their life at the time, I guess. But yeah, anyway, so let's go in and talk about how Tony just so happened to remember that there were indeed pim particles, after all, in the 1970s, which I guess luckily saved them, okay? So if you remember, in the 2012 mission, where, you know, Captain America, it was Captain America, Iron Man, and Ant-Man for this mission, they messed it up trying to get the Space Stone from Loki, so it's kind of like saying that the, you know, Ant-Man was actually pissed off at Iron Man for what happened, but then Iron Man was told him that, yeah, he just remembered that we could go back to the 1970s and get some more pim particles to begin with. So, now, keep that in mind. This basically means that they could have come up with a far better plan in 2023 before even enacting the time heist to begin with. So, now let me elaborate on that, because remember, in the original MCU timeline, Thanos is already dead. So, Thor already chopped off his head back in 2018 before the 5-year time jump. So, what I'm trying to say here is that it's not like the Avengers had to rush anything. They did not have to. Like, they had literally all the time in the world. Like, 2012 is going to be 2012. 2013 will be 2013. So, they could have had extra time to come up with a far better plan before enacting such a risky time heist mission. Like, aside from the, like, what I'm trying to say here, aside from the pim particles thing, where they could have easily gone back to 1970s, grabbed more pim particles, and then enact the mission so that they have backups just in case they screw up their mission. They could have also contacted Captain Marvel to even help them out in the mission. Like I said before, the Avengers literally have all the time in the world to wait. Like, there wasn't, like, Thanos is already dead in his timeline, so it's not like they were racing against time here, okay? So, the only reason Thanos was there is because of the 2014 mission that got screwed up, when Nebula, you know, past Nebula, future Nebula, their consciousness were linked. I forgot whatever they said. Like, there was some techno-babble that explained it, but yeah. So, either way, though, I digress. It was still a fun movie to watch, like, I'm not denying that, but let's be real here, that the plot wasn't really that strong. Now, like, you can say that the movie was fun to watch and also acknowledge that the plot had some issues, alright? So it's not the same as saying the movie sucks or anything like that. Like, maybe you might feel that way, maybe someone else might feel that way, but that's simply my opinion on the movie. I watch it just to, you know, just to kill time or have some fun, but when it comes to the plot, I'm not gonna sugarcoat and say that it's a good plot, because it is kind of weak in that regard. So, yeah. Most of the fun came from the chemistry within the characters, the fan service, the music, and the action scenes, alright? So, that's enough about Avengers Endgame, so let's go in and talk about Spider-Man No Way Home, because this movie was also extremely fun to watch, but again, similarly to Endgame, this movie also suffers from some plot issues. And now let me get started with Doctor Strange, because oh dear, like, he's the first person that came to my mind when thinking about bad writing in this movie. Now, I don't know whether it was because he was snapped away for 5 years, or whether he was simply off his game due to Wong being the Sorcerer Supreme instead of him, but he's made pretty much some of the dumbest decisions in this movie, in this entire movie. So, starting with the spell that ripped a hole in the multiverse, where Peter kind of, you know, screws up his spells 6 times. The fault lies in both individuals, okay? So, I know Doctor Strange is angry at Peter for screwing up his spell, but some of the blame also lies with him as well, so let me get into that right now. Before even enacting the spell, he had ample opportunities to ask Peter Parker in detail of exactly what he wanted. So, Peter was also kind of dumb to resort to something as drastic as brainwashing the entire planet instead of, you know, exhausting every other option possible, as even Doctor Strange points out later. But the problem here is that the movie, in this section of this part of the movie, it didn't really do a good job convincing the audience that Peter was so out of options, the only thing left to do was to resort to magic. But I was also scratching my head at Doctor Strange as well, because he didn't, like, think to tell Peter, like, okay, look, you want me to do this spell, but let's take an extra 10 minutes, because I don't want to run the risk of messing up the spell and doing something reckless, and perhaps in those extra 10, 15, or 20 minutes, you might get an idea that you did not initially think about. Like, I was thinking Doctor Strange would do something like that, but no, he jumped head on into that like a reckless child, and then boom, that's what happened. So as a result, that's the word I'm looking for. As a result, it just feels very forced and unearned, and it's made worse by the fact that this is the key moments of the movie, because this is what brings the villains from all the old Spider-Man movies to the MCU, and it was quite a flimsy premise, so that was a waste, I guess. And we do get some very fun scenes though of Spider-Man fighting Dr. Octopus at the bridge, which, by the way, I will give some props to them for this. I want to emphasize that there was a lot of improved choreography compared to the fight scenes in Far From Home. So I also had some other great scenes of the old villains interacting with each other, and then the Garfield villains like Electro and Lizard also meeting them for the first time. Like, it was just very awesome to watch on the big screen. It's like, you know, it was unreal. If you thought that this would ever happen, like even 2 years ago, maybe some people would like laugh you out of the room, but still, seeing this on screen was wow, it was amazing. So seeing Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man also redeeming himself by saving MJ in this movie was also one of the major highlights, and it got me cheering in the cinema as well. So, in fact, when it comes to the acting of the three Spider-Man, I would go as far to say that Garfield had the best acting in this movie out of the three. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but you know Aunt May's death in this movie, the one that happened after Green Goblin escapes the apartment complex. I will be honest that it did not hit me as hard as I was expecting it to. Like, let's go ahead and compare this to a better scene in Amazing Spider-Man 2, Gwen Stacy's death scene, and the acting there was infinitely better than here. Like that one made me feel something, but in this one it was like I felt empty. I didn't feel like anything really in this one. I don't know why, but there was just something missing in this scene. Like, I know she gave the line, "With great power, there must come great responsibility," but I'm referring to like the death scene itself, like afterwards. I don't know, it actually just felt like something was lacking. Like, that's like what I can feel. I know some people also felt this way, because I looked it up online a couple like weeks after, and I saw that exact sentiment. So yeah, I guess that scene could have been done better as well. But yeah, all in all, this movie was definitely a love letter to every Spider-Man fan out there, even if the plot may have suffered in certain aspects. Like, I am glad that this also addressed like not just the newer MCU generation, like not the newer like Spider-Man fans, but also the Garfield fans and the Maguire fans. So this is definitely a love letter to every fan of Spider-Man, which I appreciate. It was a great one. So yeah. So both movies are undoubtedly the biggest ones in the MCU, and although they're not perfect, they're still enjoyable to watch, because you can just tell the actors, especially Andrew Garfield, he put a lot of heart into their performances, and it shows, alright? So as for which movie was the better one, well, this really depends on which characters you enjoy more. Do you like the story of the Avengers more, or are you more of a Spider-Man like fan like in general? So I guess for me though, personally, when I rewatched both movies, I actually did enjoy Spider-Man No Way Home more than Endgame. Like, I mean, I actually do think Infinity War, like Avengers Infinity War, was also better than Avengers Endgame as well. So that's also one thing to take into account. I probably should have also compared No Way Home to Infinity War instead of Endgame, but since we're talking about the culmination of decades worth of storytelling, I felt that Endgame was a better movie to compare it to. So, yeah, I do think No Way Home was a stronger movie than Endgame, but of course this is down to personal opinion. But I definitely did like I definitely did like Tom Holland's portrayal of Spider-Man in No Way Home a lot more compared to his previous two movies. They definitely stepped it up for this one, alright? So, yeah, just comment down below which movie you preferred, and also if there's anything that I missed. I'm sure I missed a couple of details, but I mean, like, I decided to put the more important ones for the video, okay? So, yeah, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and feel free to comment down below and leave a like if you enjoyed. But I will see you in the next video. Raphael out.